It's one of the planet's most mysterious and misunderstood fish.
Some people seem to be afraid of eels similarly to how some people are afraid of snakes. Some people think that eels are snakes, but they're not snakes, they're fish.
No one knows exactly where the life of the elusive American eel begins, but it's thought to spawn in the Sargasso Sea, known for the infamous Bermuda Triangle, and for masses of free-floating seaweed, sargassum. From the Sargasso, an eel might migrate thousands of miles in its lifetime, choosing from a vast stretch of Atlantic coastline that reaches as far south as Venezuela and as far north as Greenland. It may settle in a brackish coastal bay or a muddy creek.
They basically occupy habitat from open ocean all the way up to freshwater streams, lakes, the estuary, and they're an important part of the food web in every one of those habitats.
At the end of their lives, mature eels, known as silver eels, migrate back to the Sargasso Sea to die, but not before using the last of their energy to reproduce.
There's more to their story than just being snake-like and slimy.
Emerging from the Sargasso, eel larvae, called leptocephali, float on ocean currents for about a year. As they approach land, they begin to swim on their own. These translucent glass eels are most active at night, moving away from the brine of the ocean towards fresh water.
We're at Turfville Creek, which is a little creek that dumps into the Isle of Wight Bay near Ocean City.
For 8 weeks each spring, Keith Whiteford, a biologist with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, traps these young eels in order to estimate how many have made their way to Maryland's coastal bays.
We don't know much about the spawning population, but we do know, like, once they spawn, these glass eels are juveniles, they're less than a year old, so you can look at, possibly make that jump to say, look at their reproductive success of those silver eels. So tracking those glass eels is crucial to kind of get information on the spawning population. Okay, so the trap has fresh water that is running through the trap. It's gravity fed, basically it's a siphon above the dam that's 100% fresh water. So we're providing fresh water into the trap. It fills the back of the trap, there's a little well, and then there's a ramp that goes to the front of the trap.
Eels crawl up the ramp in search of a freshwater habitat, instead finding themselves in the trap.
So we did catch a few. Not a huge catch, but we have some.
Keith estimates he's caught about 1,100 eels.
We've caught up to 300,000 eels in this trap over the course of 8 weeks. The fact that this little trap, this little wooden box with a foot entrance actually can catch up to 300,000 is pretty remarkable. So it tells you the magnitude of how many glass eels are entering in this system.
Keith brings a few eels back to the lab. They get a little anesthetic so he can weigh and measure them. He also takes a note of each one's color. The more pigment, the older it is.
These are glass eels, but they will transition into elvers. And the elvers are fully pigmented. It's their next life stage. So now we have the subsample of eels. They're all awake, doing really well. And we're gonna release them back. Actually release them. This is the middle of Chesapeake Bay.
Some will live out their lives here. Others will move on, snaking their way up rivers and streams in search of a permanent home.
My name is William Harbold. I work with Maryland Department of Natural Resources and have been working with eels here on the Patapsco River for 13 years. These young pigmented eels, or elvers as they're called, are moving upstream through the Patapsco River or any river that they find themselves in, looking for suitable habitat to live and grow and spend the majority of their adult life, which may be anywhere from 10 to 15, 20, even 30 years.
The elver's upstream migration isn't easy. Predators abound, and there are plenty of barriers.
We're here at Daniels Dam on the Patapsco River looking at an eel ladder that Maryland DNR constructed to help American eels migrate upstream beyond the dam. Eel ladder is basically a ramp that goes down the face of a dam and allows a pathway for eels to climb up and over that dam. And they climb up the dam, up the ladder to get past the dam using this substrate. It provides a good texture for eels to wiggle and worm their way through. They're climbing more like a snake than like a fish swimming.
Fresh water trickles down the ladder. It attracts the eels and keeps them wet, allowing them to breathe during their climb.
It's a tough journey to climb all the way up this to get past the dam, but these eels were spawned in the Sargasso Sea out near Bermuda, so they've had a tough journey to get here to begin with, so really this is just one more small hurdle.
There's a movement to remove some of these hurdles altogether. Dams don't just obstruct eel passage, they impact other migratory fish too, like shad and herring. In 2018, the state demolished the long, inactive Bloody Dam, located a few miles downstream from Daniels. Bloody became the third dam to be removed from the Patapsco River since 2010.
For the 5 years prior to Bloody Dam being removed downstream of this dam, we were seeing an average of 28 eels per year. The numbers of eels began to increase at Daniels Dam after Bloody was removed. In 2019, they almost doubled to about 50 eels in that first year. In 2020, it went to about 360 eels. 2021 was 3,400 eels.
And by 2023, the ladder aided the passage of about 39,000 eels.
It's been orders of magnitude in increases almost each year since Bloody Dam came out downstream.
William and DNR are also interested in how removing Bloody Dam has affected the Patapsco River's adult eels, known as yellow eels. More than half of the country's commercial yellow eel harvest once came from the Chesapeake Bay. But the fish's population has been declining for decades, driven by factors like dams, overfishing, water quality, and disease.
We're here on the Patapsco River near Elkridge, Maryland, and we're about to do an electrofishing survey for American eels. So the electrofisher is the backpack that they're wearing over there. It's a device with a battery in it that puts an electric current into the water. It makes their muscles contract and it immobilizes them, and that makes them easy to scoop up with a net. It's temporary, it doesn't kill the fish, but it immobilizes them long enough to collect them with a net and put them in a bucket. We picked this survey spot because it's one of several that are downstream of Bloody Dam, and we have a mixture of sites above and below the dam to see how numbers of eels below the dam versus numbers of eels above the dam changed when the dam came out.
William and his team concentrate their efforts under rocks and roots, where their slippery subjects are most likely to hide.
We've collected 4 eels so far, and I think 3 other species of fish.
These yellow eels will stay here for the rest of their adult lives. As they mature, they'll develop into males or females.
It went well at this site. We got a total of 19 eels. So now we're done with those, so we're just going to let them go.
Not all dams can be removed. Completed in 1928, Conowingo Dam generates enough electricity to power 160,000 homes. It's Maryland's largest source of renewable energy, situated on the Chesapeake Bay's biggest tributary, the 444-mile Susquehanna River.
American eel has been absent from the Susquehanna River Basin since the construction of the large main stem dams in the teens and 20s. Upstream migration was essentially cut off for American eels.
Aaron Henning works with the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, one of the many natural resource agencies working with the dam's owner, Constellation Energy, to bring eels back to the upper reaches of the river.
They're a native species. They're a keystone species. They're a host species for a lot of native freshwater mussels that are important for filtering the water, improving water quality.
But helping them circumnavigate a 94-foot dam calls for a ladder larger and more sophisticated than the one at Daniels. Mike Martinek works for the environmental consulting firm Normando. He and his team manage the day-to-day operations of the ladder.
Looking good. Looks like we're probably going to be a couple thousand eels today.
Mike and his team collect and count these determined elvers 7 days a week, May through November. Year to year, the numbers vary, But since the ladder was installed in 2017, they've seen as many as 620,000 eels in a single season.
These eels, they look like an earthworm. They want to be eaten by everything.
A cover on the ramp and a shade cloth over the riprap offer protection from ever-present avian predators.
That cover in the ramp is also to keep it dark in the ramp. Eels like to pass during new moon. New moon, there's not much daylight.
The collection tank is monitored around the clock. If the dissolved oxygen or temperature drop below a certain level, employees at the plant receive an alert. After the eels are counted, it's time to take them upstream.
This transport tank is 25,000 eel capacity. It's about a 700-gallon tank.
Caloyianis is the first of 4 hydroelectric dams on the Susquehanna River, and the only one with an eel ladder.
So to help the recruitment of eels, to get them in the best possible areas for the mussels, is to be above all the hydros.
Typically, that's up near Harrisburg. Most of today's eels are set free just across the river from 3 Mile Island. But a handful of them have been given a special assignment, ambassador.
Today we are dropping off American eel elvers for our Eels in the Classroom project.
It's the first day of school at North Hartford High in Hartford County.
Here are the eels, guys!
Got some eels?
Laura O'Leary's environmental science classroom is one of 50 in the Susquehanna River Basin that will raise elvers throughout the school year.
So they're trying to climb up. How high could they climb up?
They can go about their body length. We do it just to increase awareness about American eel. We're in the middle of a restoration program for a native fish species, and it's important to let people know about it and learn about it and understand why we're doing it.
The restoration appears to be working. Since the mid-2000s, 2 million eels have been released above Caloyianis Dam.
I receive reports from every corner of the basin. They've made all the way up to Cooperstown, New York, to the functional start of the river. They're throughout New York, Pennsylvania, and certainly Maryland.
Sheila Eiler, a biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, also works with Constellation Energy to protect eels. But her focus is on mature silver eels.
We've tagged over 200 silver eels, so these eels that are ready to migrate. And we found that they do pass the hydropower plants. Some don't make it through successfully. Most of the time when they do pass the hydropower plants, they have to go through the turbines to get downstream. So those are big propellers. And as those propellers spin, the eels sometimes get hit by those propellers and don't survive. So some eels do get out successfully and some don't.
As an eel approaches the end of its life, its body begins to prepare for the long migration from its freshwater home back to the Sargasso Sea. Its color changes and muscle mass increases. Its eyes get larger to help it see in darker water. It stops eating, living off fat stores. Its only focus is to spawn. As for what happens next, we can only guess, with the hope that someday we might be privy to more secrets of the American eel.